Last week, Game Freak showed off their AAA action RPG called Beast of Reincarnation, or as Shigeru Mori said in the video, a one-person, one-dog action RPG. Here's the thing though, I think this game is really important for Game Freak and the future of the studio, and here's why. Now, that sounds a bit dramatic. The game can flop harder than Concord, and Game Freak would be fine for eternity. Pokemon will always keep the lights on, but Beast of Reincarnation is unlike anything Game Freak has ever done before. It's a AAA game with high-fidelity graphics and a detailed world. Two things Pokemon is not known for, and boy have fans been vocal about that. I've been playing Pokemon games for my entire life, and while I enjoy each mainline release, I certainly understand the frustration. Game Freak presumably has infinite money and infinite resources. How come Pokemon games look so bad? Well, let's take a step back. Traditionally, a new Pokemon generation has a 3-year development cycle. That may seem like a lot, but games have gotten a lot more expensive and time-consuming. Throw in the fact that Game Freak is relatively small. We don't have the exact data, but in 2018 they had roughly 150 employees, and they were over 200 as of 2024. Also, if the rumors were true and the budget for Pokemon Legends EA was roughly $13 million, then I'd be willing to bet that budgets for Pokemon games tend to be on the smaller side. Just for context, 13 million is nothing for game development, especially for a series that big. But why is the deadline so strict? Well, Pokemon is much bigger than the games. A new generation starts with the games, but it dictates the show, merchandise, cards, and spin-offs for years to come. Delaying a game or giving extra development could potentially throw off the cadence of the entire business. If you think about it, it's wild that Gen 10 didn't come out last year, considering how big the Pokemon machine is. But I have to imagine that these deadlines and release dates are etched in diamond, not stone. Once Game Freak, Nintendo, and Creatures have decided on a release date, it has to hit that date, otherwise it can throw off every other aspect of the business. It's kind of crazy that such a smallish development studio wields so much power over the largest brand on Earth. So if these deadlines are as strict as I presume, I have to imagine this doesn't give Game Freak the time to build out the high fidelity experience that some players think Pokemon should be at this point. Remember, before the Switch, Game Freak made handheld games. Sword and Shield was their first foray into 3D console games, and 3D, especially high-fidelity 3D, requires a lot of resources, new and improved development pipelines, more staff, more resources, etc., etc., etc. Ramping up in order to fundamentally evolve Pokemon and push it to the next generation would take a long time, and a few years likely isn't enough. More money and more staff is only the start, and holding off on releasing a Pokemon game in order to appease a vocal minority that is unhappy with the series seems like a really bad idea. I say vocal minority because every Pokemon game sells millions despite the bugs, graphics, textures, and so on, even if it seems like the whole internet is complaining. But you know what game doesn't have strict deadlines with a multi-billion-dollar brand riding on it? Beast of Reincarnation. A game that isn't coming to a Nintendo console, at least not yet. This is all conjecture, of course, but Beast of Reincarnation feels like the perfect testing ground for the future of Game Freak and Pokemon. Now, I'm not trying to say that Beast of Reincarnation is just a practice AAA game before stepping things up in Pokemon. Not at all. Based on what we've seen, it seems like a fleshed out RPG that couldn't be more different than Pokemon. But I have to imagine a lot of processes and lessons learned from a game with less writing on it can be implemented in future games. Games like Pokemon that can't always afford extended development cycles, delays, and mishaps. Now, I'm also not saying that the next Pokemon game will look like this. Beasts of Reincarnation is being developed in Unreal Engine 5, and I doubt they'd sunset their proprietary engine for Pokemon games, especially with the cut Epic would take. I don't think I'd even want Pokemon games to look like this, but here's hoping that the groundwork Game Freak laid for Beast of Reincarnation will lead to even better Pokemon games in the future. Anyway, I'm excited to see what Game Freak does with Beast of Reincarnation. It's exciting seeing them branch out, and if you want a more concise breakdown of the Pokemon business model, check out my video from a few years ago called The Complicated Business of Pokemon. It's a bit outdated at this point, but it still hits the key points. Anyway, let me know what you think of Beast of Reincarnation in the comments below, and thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.